Here I am in Townsville, very grateful to be here for the opening of the Hi-Vis show at Perth Tucker Gallery. It's a show in two parts. It's about the safety wear and what that means, what Hi-Vis means to us now and what low-vis might be. It's about people, it's about landscape, it's about production, it's about the changing nature of work, especially in Australia, and what we've lost in this country and what there might be still to gain. The series of works came about as part of an ongoing series that I've been going along with since 1993, called Fully Exploited Labour. At that time I was living in the Philippines, and it struck me how so much of the making of what we call art in this hierarchical system is actually backed up by workers further down the line. And at that point of time, I was working with Filipino billboard artists. So I commissioned them to work for me. And then I started thinking about how many artists actually are called the artists, but underneath them are a whole tribe of people who work to make this thing called art come into being. So that's when it started, and it's gone off in many divergent ways. In this particular exhibition, I've looked at workers working in the Australian landscape and questioned what that means in terms of that whole history of landscape painting in Australia and what it means now as Australia becomes increasingly interested in the notions of country with a capital C, as has been framed by Indigenous people for over 60,000 years. That the country belongs to us and we belong to the country. That's First Nations people perspective. And we as Australians are facing now the fact that historically the country that we tread on here has never been ours, and there's some sort of reparations that have to be made. The reason I chose these particular landscapes for this particular series was that I made a road trip when my brother was making a film up at the Flinders Ranges. The thing that strikes everybody out there is this extraordinary vastness of country, punctuated by these rock forms and massifs, mountain ranges that have been there forever. And that stillness and quietness and foreverness is a background that seems to watch you or any of us work like ants on its surface. So there's that very timelessness at play next to this other thing of construction, keep being busy. Here we are as humans changing things. In that context, it was a film set, reframing that landscape, retelling those stories. So the thing that interested me about it was that foreverness and that instantaneousness and the kind of tension between those two things, and the way that we do keep making stories about place that slightly adjust the way all of us can see those new relationships coming into play. So questions about the physical process of painting or making these works has to do with a feeling through, I guess. I never know exactly what something will look like. I don't Photoshop things beforehand. I work from images that I've collected or sketches that I've made, and it's usually important for me to have been to a place. I think all my paintings in the last 6 or 7 years has been through places I've spent some time in, and I'm working back into them. So I start with a couple of things that I might have a hunch about, and then I just keep adding to them, and then something won't work out and I'll go back and do it another way. But these works have been done in acrylic. There's a lot of painting art, there's a lot of scratching into the surface, there's a lot of blotting and hand, finger touching and stuff like that. For me, one of the most captivating things of making a painting is that I'm not actually ever sure of how it's going to end up. The question about why here, why Townsville, and what that means to me. Art means nothing unless it circulates, unless it reaches an audience. Even though, especially since 2020, I've been in that studio night and day, endlessly, it's also something that you're saying as you're painting this dialogue with what's in front of you. It's a dialogue with yourself in a way. It's also for other people. So when it reaches an audience like this, I'm really pleased that it's going out and touching other places, and there's a potential for further interactions and responses and reactions. So when I was asked to do a show here, I thought that the Hi-Vis series was the best show for this place. So I generally try to work site specifically. But Townsville is a place that's seen a lot of change. It's currently in the midst of a great deal of change. Everybody is talking about that change. Then you don't have to look very far in Townsville to see this kind of image. A Hi-Vis worker in the streets or working on buildings, the place is growing. People are fleeing from the lockdowns in, say, Sydney and Melbourne, looking for other places to settle. And they love this big land of ours. But we do have to stop and think, at what cost do we keep the way we're developing, keep going in the way that it has? There's got to be a way, as there always has been in the past. This is not a new thing, but certainly is a particular point in time where I think this question for regional audiences is going to have a lot more impact than those of us who are just confined to cities.